Welcome to my presentation. Today I'll be talking about competition law and anti-competitive practices during the outbreak of COVID-19. I am Danjeski, a second-year undergraduate from Faculty of Law, the National University of Malaysia, and this is my competition law assignment. Competition law typically benefits consumers by spurring businesses to offer lower prices, better services, and higher quality. Competition law exists to prohibit businesses from colluding or cooperating to limit competition to the detriment of consumers. However, the coronavirus outbreak is a human tragedy. It creates unprecedented issues for the global economy and disrupted business globally. There are a lot of problems faced by the companies such as collapsing demand, disturbances in supply and distribution chains, managing employee relations, logistic and resources constraints. First, companies around the world have to do something in response to the effects of this pandemic on their businesses. So, what did the companies do? They have collaboration with competitors, capacity and price information sharing, distribution depots sharing, price fixing, and market sharing. There are exemptions for anti-competitive agreements between the competitors by competition regulators of several jurisdictions to deal with COVID-19 pandemic whose benefits outweigh the negative effects. The countries are US, UK, Europe, and Asia. So, for the first country, let's talk about the United Kingdom. On 25th March, the UK Competition Agency (CMA) published its policy document named CMA Approach to Business Cooperation in Response to COVID-19. Its focus will be protecting UK consumers from the adverse consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic to the greatest extent possible. The policy document discusses two features of competition law enforcement, which are first, prioritization, and second, exemption criteria. Prioritization means that what business behavior the CMA chooses to act against. Competition law still applies as it has not been suspended or materially even relaxed. The focus on prioritization refers only to what the CMA will devote resources to investigation. Secondly, exemption criteria means when will a collusive agreement be exempted from prohibition? Its scope only focuses on activity relevant to addressing supply needs arising from the crisis. For example, the supply and distribution of food or medical equipment. It does not apply to any other conduct outside the crisis. While from the aspect of time in the exemption criteria, the policy document will be withdrawn when the CMA considers it is no longer necessary. What businesses do to collude during the crisis must be temporary. CMA indicates it will not enforce when temporary measures to coordinate action are appropriate and necessary to avoid a shortage or ensure security of supply, for public interest, contribute to the benefit or well-being of consumers, last no longer than necessary, and deal with critical issues that arise from the pandemic. In simple words, the CMA accepts the type of anti-competitive practices which are to avoid a shortage or ensure security of supply, to ensure a fair distribution of scarce products, to ensure essential goods and services reach consumers, and to provide new services such as food delivery to vulnerable consumers. And this is in compliance with Section 9 UK Competition Act 1998, where an agreement that restricts competition is exempted from the prohibition on agreements and arrangements restricting competition if it meets all the criteria. The UK government had used these exceptional powers on 19 March that competition law would be relaxed to allow supermarkets work together to feed the nation. The temporary relaxation of rules will allow retailers to share data with each other on stock levels, cooperate to keep shops open, share distribution depots and delivery vans, and to pool staff with one another to meet demand. However, this does not give a free pass to businesses to engage in conduct that could lead to harm to consumers in other ways. CMA will not tolerate unscrupulous businesses such as exchanging commercially sensitive information, retailers excluding smaller rivals, business collusion designed to mitigate a fall in demand by artificially raising prices, dominant businesses setting excessive prices, or denying rivals access to supplies or services. The next is the European Union. According to Article 101 TFEU, competition law prohibits agreements which have the object or effect of restriction of competition. The European Competition Network (ECN) also issued a joint statement on the application of competition law during the COVID-19 crisis. It says that, in the current circumstances, the ECN will not actively intervene against necessary and temporary measures put in place in order to avoid a shortage of supply and distribution of essential products and services. This means that during a crisis, competition law remains applicable. The ECN refers to the supply and fair distribution of scarce products, food and other day-to-day commodities, and other necessaries related to COVID-19 crisis. Government permits competitors to have cooperation between undertakings, maybe in the public interest to deal with the current pandemic crisis. For example, collaboration on logistics, exchange of non-competitively sensitive information, joint advocacy actions between competitors, and joint research and R&D. In the case of Norway, the government has granted the country's air, land and sea transportation sector a 3-month exception from antitrust enforcement. The exemption allows companies temporarily coordinate to maintain the transportation of passengers and goods in Norway in order to secure the population access to goods and services. Similarly, the German Minister of Economics has announced on 20th March 2020 that the German government wants to loosen up competition law in Germany. During the crisis, they want to facilitate cooperation between grocery retail chains so they can supply the population with food safely. The next country is India. In India, the Competition Act still applies. Anti-competitive practices violates the Competition Act. In order to fight the negative impacts, there could be legitimate reasons for which competitors may have to collaborate. However, collaboration and cooperation amongst competitors can be exempted on grounds of public interest. This would enable companies to collaborate with their competitors for the purpose of meeting the demand of essential commodities, medicines, medical supplies or equipment, research and development activities. However, forming cartel, price fixing, allocation of customers, limiting or controlling the supply of products, abuse their dominant position, are prohibited under the Competition Act and may not be justified. The last country will be the United States. In March 24, the US government committed to an expedited antitrust procedure and providing guidance for collaborations of businesses working to protect the health and safety of Americans during the COVID-19 pandemic. Firstly, COVID-19 will require unprecedented cooperation between businesses. Secondly, there are many ways firms can engage in pro-competitive collaboration that does not violate the antitrust laws. This means the antitrust laws still apply in full. There is no collusion exemption for public health emergencies. However, the agency noted that they will also account for exigent circumstances in evaluating efforts to address the spread of COVID-19 and its aftermath. For example, the agencies noted that healthcare facilities may need to work together in providing resources and services to communities to ensure the supply of products. The regulator also prohibits companies from taking advantage of the current situation through unlawful collaboration with regards to products deemed as essential to protect the health of consumers. As a conclusion, after looking into different jurisdictions, it is clear that the government and public will do the best to mitigate the effects of this pandemic to the extent possible. Even as we learn to deal with the public health implications, a necessary next step will be to revive the struggling global economy. Where the business response involves collaboration between competitors, firms must remain compliant with competition law. They must also ensure their conduct does not attract scrutiny under powers to deal with exploitative commercial behavior. So that's all from me. Thank you.